Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and today I want to have a little bit of a discussion with you. Now, let me start off by saying this is a pretty subjective discussion. These are things that I just like about knives, some of my favorite features and characteristics of knives. Now, let me be clear that these are not things that I look for in a review necessarily, okay? So, these things, a knife could have all of them or have none of them, and I may still review it favorably if I think you would really like it. That is, if I think it'd be a good knife for most people. It may be missing features that I particularly like, but which don't really affect the function all that much. Although some of these do affect the function. It would probably lose points for not having some of these things. But let me give you a couple of examples, okay? A clip that functions, accessible lock bar and thumb stud, blade play, fit and finish issues. These things are all things I look for in a review, but won't be on this list because they don't really get me excited. They don't really make me geek out over a knife. All right. But the things that I'm going to share in this video and the things that I'd love to have you share down in the comments are things that you go, oh, I just love it when a knife has this. I just love this particular finish or this particular feature, or maybe it's a material. And so let me work my way through some of these with you, and I'd love to hear yours as well, mentioned down below. I actually asked about this over on the Sharp Stuff Facebook page, and so if you want to join in the conversation over there, you can join that page. I'll put a link in the description box. Also, I will put links to Southern Edge Knife Works and White Mountain Knives, both channel sponsors, and you can get a discount using my discount code Sharp Stuff by going to either one of those websites. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. I want to begin with sort of an overall principle, okay? And here's a knife that captures the principle pretty well. Sorry, it's got some stuff on the blade. I do use my knives even though I take care of them. So this is the Zero Tolerance 0562. I guess I should do a quick run through here while we get started. Riot Torrent, We Knives 037, AD15 from Cold Steel, Benchmade Crooked River, and Chris Reeve Knives in Cosi. I'll try to keep naming knives as they come in here. But the first thing that I really, really like is balance. So that's a knife that feels to me like it's pretty versatile in terms of what it can do, right? If I'm carrying a pocket knife, I'm carrying it because I want to kind of be ready for anything on a given day. And so knives that I feel like are ready for just about anything that I could anticipate having to deal with on that day are going to be knives that I appreciate the most. All right. I never like to feel like I'm carrying a knife that, I'm going to get into a situation where it's not suited for this very well. And so, I tend to like balance, or I like balance in a number of different areas, but I like balance. I like knives that are comfortable in hand, aren't too heavy to carry, have a nice blade that really cuts stuff, but isn't overly thick. Like I don't want to sharpen pry bar. It needs to be it needs to be a knife that looks good, that feels good in hand, that it feels nice in pocket. And so there, knives that kind of strike this really nice balance are the ones that tend to attract me the most. However, I will say that I probably am more forgiving about features and size on the larger end. So, when I say balance, I mean anything under about 8 ounces or so, right? I'm not going to be like, it must be under 4 ounces or it must be 1 ounce per inch or something like that. I don't really care that much about weight. But, and so I guess that's the one point, I guess, that can be out of balance, if you will. But overall, I like to see balance in my knives. All right. And that takes a number of different forms. Now let's get into some of the more specific features, such as the first one I want to bring up is a satin grind. So Spyderco especially, I just love the way that they have these beautiful grind lines. It's just, it's shiny a little bit, but it's not a mere finish. You can see those nice belt grinder satin. You can see those nice grinder lines there. They're very observable. I really, really love that as you just kind of turn the knife and you can see all of those come and go. And there are a number of different examples we could give. Look at that. I love that. Really, really awesome. This CT is another one, a good example of really, really nice grind lines there. You can actually feel them just a little bit as you rub your fingers over. And I really enjoy that. I definitely enjoy it more than a stonewash blade. It's not that I dislike stonewash blades, but I definitely prefer a satin finish on a blade, and especially these dual multi-directional satin finishes really excite me. I just love a satin grind. Now the next thing, I'm gonna have to move a few of these knives out of the way because they don't have it. At least most of them don't. But still talking about the idea of blades here, the next thing that I really like is, here's an example of both satin ground and also hollow. I love hollow grinds. I just find, to me, if I'm going to use, if I'm going to make an EDC style blade, it really should have a hollow grind because it allows, in my mind, the most versatility. And not only in my mind, I think it just allows for a blade to be thick and heavy duty while still working really well as a cutting tool. And so hollow grinds to me are sort of the king of the grinds. It's not that I dislike flat ground blades. It's not that there aren't lots of people who do them well. Cold steel is a great example. Cold steel can do a fairly thick, heavy-duty blade that's flat ground and still get it to cut stuff well. But a lot of companies really struggle with that. And even, Spyderco, who's known to be so slicey, a flat ground blade you'll find will really bind up because a lot of friction can be developed on this sort of full wedge here that's created. Where on a hollow ground blade, what often happens is material only touches this blade down here and then right up here. And so all of this sort of becomes a cavity where no friction is created. And it's just a really nice way of doing things. So hollow grinds, satin grinds really excite me. And the last thing that I want to touch on this whole list, and all of these knives, and let's bring in a few more because this is not confined just to hollow grinds. By the way, let's see, what have we got here? Cold Steel 8010, Chris Reeve Knives Nyala. I think I already mentioned that. We got a Wee Knives Malice here. So here's a Malice. This is a fairly thick blade stock, very high flat grind, definitely one of those knives that's subject to the kind of friction I was talking about. However, it's also very thin behind the edge, so this cuts really well. And good edge geometry is the next thing that really excites me. So when I get a knife and I'm looking at it, I'm cutting stuff with it, when I feel that it cuts really well, even when it's fairly thick and hefty, I know that kind of ties into balance as well. But I think it's because of that desire that I have for balance that I like the hollow ground blades and I like those thin edges. I really like it when a knife has a blade that really inspires a lot. Like, look at how thick and heavy duty this is. This is a knife that makes you almost want to say, sharpen pry bar, but then when you go to cut stuff with it, it cuts so well. And that's because of a combination of the hollow grind and the reasonably thin edge. Now, this is not a super thin edge. It's definitely heftier than some of the others out here with it. But it strikes this great balance of toughness and cutting power that really, I find a lot of joy in that. Okay, another example that does it perhaps not as well, but is an overall very well balanced knife in general, the Lion Steel M4. It feels great in hand, and this blade, again, is very confidence inspiring. You really feel like, man, I can get some serious work done with this. But then when you go to cut stuff, it works so well. All right, so again, a really nicely balanced blade that I feel like can just do everything and do it all well really is enjoyable to me. Next up is, let's talk a little bit about action. So I'll pull some of these out of the way. All of the knives you see here, I do enjoy the action, but I've got a couple of perhaps more outstanding examples that I want to bring in. So this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. All right, so there's a couple of reasons I did this. Not all of these are the same pivot type. So we got some bearing pivots here. We've got some washer pivots. What's the same about all of these is a satisfying action. This is incredible, right? This is phosphor bronze washers. It's so smooth, so fast, so enjoyable. And of course the compression lock is basically perfectly executed on the Para 2. All right, so there's an example of a great action. Here's an example of a great action. Here's an example of a great action. All right, all of these are so enjoyable to deploy. And again, they don't have all the same mechanisms. We got some bearing pivots here. We got some phosphor bronze washers here. We got some dual row bearings here. Okay, so there are differences, but the thing they have in common is they all feel smooth and fast. And the other thing I like is just a little bit of tension. So I don't want the knife to just like wham shut like a guillotine. This one's probably the fastest example. It's it's pretty drop shut, but it's not, let's say, as drop shut as a Rask or a Norseman or some others I've had that can drop shut really easy. Even other Wii knives. I like it to be I like it to feel, I guess, hydraulic is the best example. Here's another great action, dual row bearings on that guy. Okay, so all of these are examples of great actions, but the thing I like most is that they're smooth, they're comfortable, they're easy, they feel clean, and just, I guess, hydraulic is the best way to put it. Now, I only have one example of the next thing that I really enjoy, because these are not so common, although they're more common on Riots and a few others. But if you're going to do bearings, the best option, and the one that really gives me a lot of satisfaction, is going to be dual row bearings or roller bearings. They're just so nicely done. And probably the most outstanding example, and I don't have it here, has got to be the Real Steel Megalodon. The action on that knife and just the feel and smoothness of it, at least on the older generation before they switched to bearings in some, was incredible. Like it was, you know, the action that I would be happy with on a $2,000 knife, but it was on like a $180 knife. Just really outstanding, and a lot of that can be attributed to the roller bearings. So what about locks? Well, I definitely like strong, confidence-inspiring locks. All right, now it's not necessary. You know, I think we've all seen the test where the compression lock did only okay when doing that weight hang test. And so it's not that I must have a strong lock, but something like this where it's just crazy overbuilt, heavy duty, is very exciting to me. Another example, of course, would be the Formax. And, you know, I do definitely like that sort of overbuilt, heavy-duty kind of feeling. I want to give a couple of examples. Now, let me say this. I don't have one here with me, but the best implementation of the frame lock is not the Hinderer, but is the Ferrum Forge, you know, anything done by Ferrum Forge as a custom. This knife has it as well. So see how the relief cut here is actually cut in, and there's a thicker wall at the front, and you could do a thicker wall at the back as well, and that's going to add some strength and stability to that relief cut. And I really think that's the very best way to do it, and I kind of wish all relief cuts were done that way. Now again, let me stress that lock strength is not the end all and be all, right? I'm not like, well, any lock that can't hold 500 pounds, forget it. I'm not buying it. That's not a thing. And I, you know, that's not something that I'm even a little bit concerned about. I've reviewed tons of knives that have, you know, only moderate lock strength that I absolutely love. But there is something to be said for a very well executed lock that inspires a lot of confidence. Before we move away from the whole locking stuff. So I like knives with slightly special features that don't go over the top. So I've got a couple of examples here. This Hinderer, this XM18 slicer is beautiful. Look at the green anode, the bronze hardware. It's really attractive, but it's not so over the top that it feels gaudy. And I think that's an easy line to cross. You know, this knife is kind of right there. I really like the marbled carbon fiber as well, you know, on the scales and on the pivot collar here. Of course, I kind of wish the clip was that way, but that wasn't an option. So some decoration for your knife, if you will, making it a little pocket jewelry-ish, I enjoy without going too far. I think the Riot Torrent is another great example of that, because the anodized hardware and the ceramic ball on the clip, a little bit of milling here, it's just really nicely balanced. All right, it's got some nice little accents, but it's not crazy over the top. Really enjoy that. Now, The next thing is a comfortable handle. I love a knife that feels a certain way in hand. This is a great example. You get this in hand and it just feels right. Same is true of this knife. Feels fantastic in hand. The Hinderer, again, feels just, again, right. Feels fantastic. Large Crooked River, same thing. Real standout examples, the 8010, amazing, just hand filling and confidence inspiring. The Nyala, we had this here before. The micarta on this just really is, this is a great knife. Just makes you really want to get out and start cutting stuff. We've talked about this before, or I mean, we had this one out a minute ago, and I made this point as well then, but the Line Steel M4, again, feels so nice in hand. The Formax, well, actually, you know what? Here's one we haven't talked about much yet. The WE 037. This feels like it was just meant to be in a human hand. All right, in either grip. One of the most. This knife just does so many things perfectly that it's hard to compare even other knives to it. The Formax, very heavy, but again, so good in hand. It just feels like it was meant to be held. So those are a bunch of examples. Whenever I get a knife that just feels that way in hand, that doesn't make you, that it just feels like it was molded to your hand, that's really enjoyable. And again, not every knife has to be that way, not at all. I've positively reviewed tons of knives that are just comfortable, right? They're not amazing. But when it can be amazing, that's really enjoyable. Let's see, what else have I got to mention? Oh yeah, I haven't really talked about fixed blades yet. Perfectly sized, balanced fixed blades are another little, another thing that I really enjoy. This Kaiser Harpoon fits that mold really well. We've had already the Nyala out here, which again is a really nice sized fixed blade. The M4, perfect. And there are a number of others we could talk about, but these are just good examples. I enjoy carrying a fixed blade a lot, but I just find most of them don't lend themselves to carry all that well. So when I find one that does, I get really happy about it. Okay, and then let's get to my last and perhaps most loved, and likely the feature that most of you are going to disagree with me on, and that is the finger choil. I love knives with finger choils. I don't know why specifically. I like the idea of being able to choke up a little bit, and I frequently use these knives in that choked up position. Let's see, I've got more. There we go. So all of these knives have a nice big available finger choil. All right, it's not that a knife has to have that for me to like it, but I definitely prefer when it does. Now the 8010 is more of a sharpening, 15 and 10 is kind of more of a sharpening choil, although this one your finger does fit in pretty easily. Even on the 8015 your finger fits in and it's okay. Same with the Riot Torrent, right? You've got lots of room for a finger in there. But these knives are really standout examples, right? The Formax and the Hinderer and the Malice and the 037 and the Para 2. Of course, there are other Spydercos, the Mannix and a few others. So I definitely am a fan of the finger choil. That's just something, again, a knife doesn't have to have it. I don't really make a big deal out of it in reviews, but I'll certainly take it when I can get it. And I'm going to like a knife personally more that has it. All right, guys, so that's my list. It's a pretty, as I say, a pretty subjective subject matter. We got to look at a bunch of cool knives, and so it was a lot of fun in that regard. And I would love to hear the features that you guys like. We've already listed a bunch over on, again, the Sharp Stuff Facebook page and on in the comments section of YouTube. I put this question out there to you guys a couple of days ago. So again, keep up the conversation. I'd love to hear yours. This is just a lighthearted conversational video. because we're in these times where there's so much bad stuff going on. It's like every day you hear something stupider than the day before. And so it's nice to be able to talk about something that's just, encouraging and a little bit lighter. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Don't forget to check the links down below, as well as the Sharpstuck Facebook page. And don't forget to like and subscribe either. Thanks for watching again. We'll talk to you soon.